Hello, Year 4. Okay, so we've now had a little think about everything that we can remember about Vikings and about the Viking way of life. And we're going to carry on now reading another couple of pages of this book. And then there's another task that I would like you to do at the end of that. Okay, so we know that Odd's father has been killed at sea. And he is now at home with just his mother. It was 3 weeks after the long ship had come back without his father's body. Odd had taken his father's tree-cutting axe, so huge he could hardly lift it, and had hauled it out into the woods, certain that he knew all there was to know about cutting trees, and determined to put this knowledge into practice. Let me have Odd there, going out to cut down the trees. First thoughts. Do you think something is going to happen? Do you think this is going to be a good experience or not? Thinking about the tension that we looked at last week. Short sentences. He should possibly, he admitted to his mother later, have used the smaller axe and a smaller tree to practice on. Still, what he did was remarkable. After the tree had fallen on his foot, he had used the axe to dig away the earth beneath his leg, and he had pulled it out, and he had cut a branch to make himself a crutch to lean on, as the bones in his leg were shattered. And somehow he had got himself home, hauling his father's heavy axe with him, for metal was rare in those hills, and axes needed to be bartered or stolen, and he could not have left it to rust. So 2 years passed, and Odd's mother married fat Alfred, who was amiable enough when he had not been drinking, but he already had 4 sons and 3 daughters from a previous marriage, and he had no time for a crippled stepson. So Odd spent more and more time out in the great woods. Odd loved the spring, when the waterfalls began to course down the valleys and the woodland was covered with flowers. He liked summer, when the first berries began to ripen, and autumn, when there were nuts and small apples. Odd did not care for the winter, when the villagers spent as much time as they could in the village's great hall, eating root vegetables and salted meat. In winter the men would fight and sing and sleep and wake and fight again, and the women would shake their heads and sew and knit and mend. By March the worst of the winter would be over. The snow would thaw, the rivers began to run, and the world would wake into itself again. But not that year. Winter hung in there, like an invalid refusing to give up. Day after grey day, the ice stayed hard, the world remained unfriendly and cold. In the village, people got on each other's nerves. They'd been staring at each other across the great hall for months now. Do you remember that in the middle of the Viking encampment, there was a great hall, and it had like the leader at one end in that great big chair? Do you remember that? There was just one way in and one way out. Everybody had to travel in the same direction in the great hall. So this is where they'd been based for all of those cold winter months. It was time for the men to make the longboats seaworthy, time for the women to start clearing the ground for planting. The games became nasty, the jokes became mean, fights were too hurt, which is why one morning at the end of March, some hours before the sun was up, when the frost was hard and the ground still like iron, while fat Alfred and his children and Odd's mother were still asleep, Odd put on his thickest, warmest clothes. He stole a side of smoked blackened salmon from where it hung in the rafters, and a fire pot with a handful of glowing embers from the fire. And he took his father's second best axe, which he tied by a leather thong to his belt, and he limped out into the woods. Remember that he has one leg that was really, really badly broken, and he has to walk with a crutch, and there was no hospitals to give him operations or anything, so his leg would have mended in a very crippled position. Okay. The snow was deep and treacherous, with a thick, shiny crust of ice on top. It would have been hard walking for a man with 2 good legs, but for a boy with 1 good leg, 1 very bad leg, and a wooden crutch, every hill was a mountain. Odd crossed a frozen lake, which should have melted weeks before, and went deep into the woods, until he reached his father's old wood-cutting hut. The days seemed almost as short as they had been in midwinter, and although it was only mid-afternoon, it was dark as night by the time he reached his destination. The door was blocked by snow, and Odd had to take a wooden spade and dig it out before he could enter. He fed the firepot with kindling and tended it until he felt safe transferring the fire into the fireplace where the old logs were dry. On the floor he found a lump of wood slightly bigger than his fist. He was going to throw it on the fire, but his fingers felt carving on the small wooden block, and so he put it to one side to look at when it was light. He gathered snow in a small pan and melted it over the fire, and he ate smoked fish and hot berry water. It was good. There were blankets in the corner still and a straw-stuffed mattress, and he could imagine that the little room smelled of his father, and nobody hit him or called him a cripple or an idiot, and so, after building the fire high enough that it would still be burning in the morning, he went to sleep quite happy. Okay. My task for you is to have a real think about the character of Odd. In our class page, I've printed off one of these for you, which is a zone of relevance. We've looked at these before, so you put the words that are the most relevant in the middle of the bullseye, and then ones that you think don't really relate to Odd in the next one, and then ones that you think, no, it's not much to do with him at all out here. And if there's any that you think that has absolutely nothing to do with Odd, then they would go around the outside. Now, some of these words are tricky. Some of these words are words that you may not even have heard of before. So you're going to need a dictionary or some way of finding out what these were. These are your words. You have got adventurous, ambitious, callous, credulous, devious, dubious, envious, gorgeous, facetious, magnanimous, malicious, mysterious, righteous, serious, and spontaneous. So have a think about which ones of those describe Odd the most. They go in the middle, and then out if they do not have any relevance to him. Okay? Once you have done that, I would like you to use your zone of relevance to create a character description of Odd. Okay? Can't wait to see them. Have a fabulous week. Enjoy the story so far, and really do have a go at all of those art projects that I've put onto our class page as well. Hopefully, I will speak to most of you on Thursday when we will have another catch up. All right, have a brilliant week. Take care. Bye.